finally finished a title that was a very complicated read for me. I actually didn't think that I was going to finish it, and not because it was a bad story, was badly written or a bad plot or anything like that, but it was just hard to sit with and hard to consume. But it was done in such an innovative way that I want to go ahead and discuss that with you today. And that How to Commit a Postcolonial Murder by Nina McConigley. She's the author of short story collection of Cowboys and East Indians, but this is her debut novel, so let's chat about it. Welcome back, old and new friends. I'm so glad you're here with me today at Seaside Reads with Arlene. So let's dive in to How to Commit a Postcolonial Murder by Nina McConigley. I had shared about this in my 26 plus most anticipated releases of 2026 for me, and it was on my list. I was immediately captured by the title. It was obviously something that just stops you in your track and you're just like, what is this about? I have to be honest, I stepped into it thinking it was a completely different story than what it ended up being, and that's not a bad thing. I will say that there is various trigger warnings with this title, so I do urge you to look at those trigger warnings before you dive into the story and make sure that it's something you can explore, dive into, or spend time with. I would not consider this one of my seaside read selections, meaning the comfort reads or things like that. This story is meant to make you uncomfortable and to sit in that discomfort. Let's get into what this story is about, and then we'll dive in, as per usual, my thoughts of everything in between. I'll be looking down on my notes. I did check this out from my library. There was quite a bit of holds on it, so I had to return it right away as soon as I finished it, but I was glad to get an early copy, and I did immersive reading with this one. Also able to get the audiobook, which was excellently narrated. That was really well recommend, if you dive into this title, to go ahead and get the audiobook as well, because I think that elevated the experience, but at the same time it made it even more uncomfortable, if that was even possible. This story, as I said before, has some very big trigger warnings, and that being child abuse and SA. So I want to be very clear that this story will not be for everyone, and it's typically not for me as well. I almost abandoned ship. I'm glad I didn't, and I sat in that discomfort, and I lay witness, whether, obviously a fictional character, but to this experience. But it was a very difficult time for me. Now, it wasn't all layered in that aspect where it was just trauma on top of trauma. There was some lightness to it throughout, and then there was quite a bit of dark humor, 80s nostalgia and such. So this is set in rural Wyoming in 1986, and it follows sisters Georgie and Agatha Krishna. They welcome their aunt and their uncle and their young cousin that newly arrived from India. Now, you're presented and dropped into this story. You immediately know that the uncle is dead and that the twin sisters have done the framing of it is letting you know why. Their story. Yes, we killed our uncle, but this is why. Let me tell you our story. And that is when you fully dive into that. So soft spoilers here, just because I think it's important with these kind of stories that you don't go in blind. So there is, like I said, some abuse and child abuse specifically as part of the narrative. So as it was, is a custom, especially, families immigrating to this country, is, family members come over and you take them in, you live all under one. You have like this very interesting framing at the beginning where Georgie explains that the British are to blame. That's an interesting take, but you soon find out that there is so much more and deeper layers, of course, to the story of where that even started. This strong connection with sisterhood. There is that connection where family members with secrets. Georgie needs you to understand, and this story does break the fourth wall several times throughout. She needs you to understand her story. Not so much important that her uncle was dead, but to understand her story, to understand her sister's story and her family story all together. There is snippets throughout where they're reading a magazine. I think it was like 17 magazine that they both sisters really enjoy. So you have like kind of like a little diary entry. Actually, I feel like the whole book felt like you were privy to this diary, and you are like sneaking into someone's story, but they want you to read it because they want you to know what happened and what was their lived experience. Whether that was a lot of connection with dark humor, which that was throughout, but also very raw and explicitly implied, and then sometimes depicted. Details the violence, she details the history of her family, and then there is a lot of like disconnected thought process, almost how you would have written exactly in your diary, of a loose connecting story. They all basically relate to this personhood. There is a lot of very deep dynamics within the family. This is a very short novel. I believe it's actually, what was it, like it was less than 300 pages. So the pacing, I wouldn't call it a rapid pacing because there is an unfolding that happens, and even though it's a short novel, it doesn't feel rushed. It feels like, you know, you unraveling the story bits by bit, like you're sitting in an interview with this child and they are telling you why they did it. So it's very haunting, and there is a part where there is a very specific scene that I think that was the point where I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know. I have a very hard rule that I do not read titles with any forms of child abuse. I just can't do it. Maybe it's being a mom, whatever it is, I just can't do it. So this, surprising to me, I surprised myself that I stuck through it. And the reason I did is because the author did such a beautiful, intricate job of like putting light to something that is so real for so many, unfortunately. And that's how it felt. It felt like you were not reading fiction. You were reading a depiction, whether it was court reportings with, you know, the psychiatric evaluation of these children, or just, you know, having those flashbacks into these moments that led them to that place in time. And whether that was the intention or not, I'm not sure. But there was this moment where there is a scene that is depicted, and it was very troubling scene, very hard to consume. And they say to you, because they break the wall on the fourth wall and say, I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable, or something. I'm paraphrasing. I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable. And then shortly after, I'm not sorry I made you uncomfortable, because she wants you to hear the story. She wants you to see her. And that deep theme throughout, I just, you know, for a debut novel, I know that this author has written short story collections. I have not read those. But for a debut novel, I think that some people will greatly miss what was done here, and some people will get it. And I think this is one of those books that I'm not going to say, oh my gosh, you have to go ahead and pick it up and read it, because I'm very cautious with stories like this and saying, please read the trigger warnings, because I don't think this book is for everyone to consume, or maybe it needs to be consumed at the right time for you. But that's me, that's my perspective. But I will say that she did something that was very palpable throughout, and it at times felt so real. And when an author accomplished to make fiction feel that real, that's true craftsmanship there, regardless of the hardship of the theme, which I felt that it was very, very hard for me to digest. And in the underlining part, which is what I thought I was stepping into, was a murder mystery of sorts, which is that's what you read in the synopsis, is a murder mystery of sorts. You're finding out at the beginning that this uncle has been unalived by his nieces, and you have to wonder what brought them to that point. You know, mentally unstable? Was it that he did something? So you have no idea when you're stepping into this book. And the reason that I provide a little bit more context is because I feel like you should have a little bit of a trigger warning with this title, and know that there is some essay that has an underlying layer. But there's more to the story than the trauma. There's more to it. And the ending, I felt like I was at a point where I was just trying to get through it, even though, like I said, it was done in such an innovative way. I was trying to get through it, and I was like, you know what, I really want to finish her story. I want to finish these sit in this discomfort. But then I got to the ending, and I don't even know how to express how I felt in the ending without doing any spoilers. The ending, I did not see it coming. And I keep saying this lately, maybe I'm just picking the right titles at this point, but I did not see it coming. Cultural dynamics, as well as Indian American family, and navigating that with I believe the father was the father that was white, but so there was like some just a lot of like cultural identity themes throughout, things to open up your horizons and learn about as well. I did like the dry, like sarcastic humors that was thrown in there. I even liked the quizzes. There was like quizzes at the end of chapters where it was like reading the, old school magazines from the 1900s. And, if you selected mostly A, then this means this or that means that. And you're kind of seeing them adapt some coping mechanism amongst everything that's going on, and just being a kid in certain instances and moments, and living their lives among the trauma, and how they navigate that with just being a kid at times, and then dealing with some other types of disorders and things that I won't express more beyond that in that arena. So you do see a whole picture. It's not all sadness, though I do feel like this is sad. I wouldn't describe it any other way, but a sad story. A sad story that you may feel some kind of way at the end. I do feel like the twist at the end was going to be a soft spoiler at this end, so feel free to skip the rest of this video. It's a soft spoiler just for my impressions of the ending twist. So if you don't want to hear any, like even a hint of a soft spoiler, this is not giving anything away, then stop watching at this point. Okay. The ending, I feel like the ending twist was a gift to the readers, whether that's the intention or not. And that sounds a little egotistical, or, but I felt like it was a gift for sitting in that discomfort. It was like, okay, you made it through this, what could be a very complicated story to consume, a very hard one. But I felt the twist was a small little gift that the reader received. And it was not just like, oh, I'm wrapping this up in a bow or anything like that, because it wasn't. It was such a complicated one, a complicated twist, but I felt like it was a hidden little gift to the readers for sitting in that discomfort. I'm really glad that I soldiered through and finished this novel, because I think that her debut novel was true craftsmanship. The voice, the tension, the sadness, the rawness, the scenes were very real. That's the only way I can fully express that. There was such realness to it, and it was disgusting. It made you angry. It made you feel all the feels. However, will I change my hard rule of not reading books about child abuse after this? Absolutely not. I can't purposely jump into stories like this, but I am glad that I did finish this title. I am glad I did that. And if this is a story something that you're able to consume, and you're in the right space and time, I think it was done exceptionally well. I'm glad that I spent some time with this author's work. I'll see you guys next time, and we'll chat about another story.
If you feel alone, like nobody understands, I hope that you know you're not